Stop the treatment. She's worth more to this family dead than disabled. Those were the words my father said to the doctor while I lay paralyzed in a hospital bed, able to hear everything but unable to move a muscle. The rhythmic, suffocating hum of the ventilator was the only other sound in the room. I was locked inside my own body, eyes closed, floating in a terrifying darkness, but my mind was wide awake. I felt a heavy hand grab my limp wrist. It was not holding me for comfort. It was jamming my thumb onto an ink pad, then pressing it hard against a piece of paper. "Press it hard," my father whispered to someone else in the room. "She's gone, Silas. Even if she wakes up, she's a vegetable. We need this land sold by Friday, or the loan sharks take the company. She's saving the family one last time." I felt the cold ink stain my skin. The screaming in my mind turned into a diamond-hard vow. "You are not killing me, Dad. You are just arming me." Have you ever realized that someone you loved viewed you as a transaction, not a person? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. Most people look at the Sullivan real estate empire and see a dynasty. They see the skyscrapers, the luxury condos, the ribbons my father cut on the evening news. They do not see the rot in the foundation. For the last 10 years, I was the one holding up the building while Victor tried to set it on fire. I was not just his daughter. I was his fixer. I am an urban planner by trade. While Victor was popping champagne at gala dinners, I was sitting in fluorescent-lit city council meetings fighting for zoning variances. I spent my 20s sleeping in construction trailers, auditing concrete pours, and navigating the bureaucratic nightmares that actually get buildings built. I saved the company from bankruptcy 3 separate times. I turned his sloppy, ego-driven investments into gold, and I did it quietly, from the shadows. He told me I had to earn my keep. He told me that living frugally built character. So, while he drove a Bentley Continental GT, he did not actually own. I drove a Honda Civic with a dent in the bumper. While he lived in the penthouse of our flagship development, I lived in a 600-square-foot apartment, 20 blocks away. "It is about optics, Elena," he would say, adjusting his silk tie in the mirror I paid for. "The CEO needs to project success. The daughter needs to project humility. We are a team." I believed him. I thought we were sacrificing together for the legacy. I did not know that while I was studying blueprints at 2 in the morning, he was in private rooms in Macau and Las Vegas, leveraging our assets until they snapped. It was not business bad luck. It was addiction. Victor was a gambler who believed he was smarter than the house. By the time of my accident, he was not just in the red. He was drowning. He owed $8 million, and he did not owe it to banks send letters. He owed it to private lenders who send men with baseball bats. That is where the lot comes in. 5 years ago, when my mother passed, she did the only smart financial thing anyone in this family has ever done. She bypassed Victor completely. She left me a specific asset in her will. A 3-acre plot of industrial wasteland on the edge of the city. Victor laughed at it. He called it Mom's mud pit. He let me keep it because he thought it was worthless. He was wrong. I knew the city's expansion plans. I knew that Mud Pit was the future logistic hub of the entire district. That land was the only clean, unencumbered asset left in the entire Sullivan portfolio. It was worth $3.5 million as it sat, and Victor knew it was the only thing that could pay off the sharks before they broke his legs. But he could not sell it. It was in my name, lying in that hospital bed, listening to the ventilator click. The math finally made sense. He did not sign that DNR because he was a grieving father overwhelmed by tragedy. He signed it because the loan sharks had given him a deadline. My life was a liability on his balance sheet. My death was immediate liquidity. He was not pulling the plug to end my suffering. He was cashing out. I lay there in the dark, floating between the hum of the machines, and I finally understood the equation. To Victor, people are not family. They are investments. You put money in, you get value out. If the value drops, you cut your losses. It is the sunk cost fallacy. In his mind, I had become a depreciating asset. My medical bills were a liability on his balance sheet. My recovery would be slow, expensive, and uncertain. But my death? That was immediate liquidity. It was the only way to unlock the deed to the land without my consent. He did not hate me. Hate implies passion. Hate is hot. This was cold. It was simple arithmetic. $8 million in debt versus a $3.5 million asset blocking his survival. He was not acting like a father. He was acting like a CEO liquidating a non-performing division. That realization did not break my heart. It froze it. It turned my grief into something useful. It turned me into a competitor. And Victor never wins against a competitor who knows his playbook better than he does. The first thing I felt physically was the dry scratch of the tube in my throat. Then, the light. It was not the harsh overhead fluorescence. It was a penlight shining directly into my eyes. I blinked. The blur resolved into a face. Dr. Eris. He was the attending neurologist, the young doctor who had argued with Victor about significant brain activity while I was drifting. He looked exhausted. He checked the monitors, then looked back at me. He saw the focus in my pupils. He saw the recognition, and he saw the rage. Most people in that situation would ask, "Where am I? Or is my family here?" I did not. I had heard everything. I knew exactly where I was, and exactly who my family was. I swallowed hard, fighting the sandpaper feeling in my throat, and whispered the only word that mattered. "Lawyer." Dr. Eris froze. He looked at the door to make sure it was closed. Then his eyes dropped to my right hand, resting on the sheet. There was a faint smudge of blue ink on my thumb, the residue of the stamp pad Victor had used. Dr. Eris knew. A medical professional knows the difference between a coma patient and a hostage. He had seen the notary leave. He had seen the ink. "Your father," Dr. Eris said, his voice barely audible, "signed a DNR. He claimed he had power of attorney. I can report this to the police right now. We can have security bar him from the floor." "No," I rasped. My voice sounded like grinding stones. "Police take too long. He will sell the land before they even file the paperwork. If he knows I am awake, he will run." I needed time. I needed to be dead to the world so I could be alive in the market. I looked Dr. Eris in the eye. "I need 48 hours. Tell him I am fading. Tell him the brain swelling is increasing. Keep me on the critical list." He hesitated. I was asking him to falsify medical records. It could cost him his license. But then, he looked at that ink stain on my thumb again. He looked at the bruising on my wrist where Victor had squeezed too hard to get the print. The ethical line had already been crossed. Now it was just about who got punished for it. He nodded once, sharp and decisive. "I will adjust the hourly observation logs. As far as the official record is concerned, your Glasgow coma scale is still 3. You are deep under." "Thank you," I whispered. "Rest," he said, adjusting the monitor to keep the alarms silent. "I will keep the wolves out." I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I began to draft a contract in my head. For the next 6 hours, I was a ghost in the machine. Under the tent of my hospital sheets, the glow of my smartphone screen was the only light in the room. I did not need to hack anything. I did not need a password cracker. I just needed the county clerk's public online portal and the login credentials I had memorized 10 years ago as the company's lead planner. I navigated to the property records for the lot. And there it was. Transfer of deed. Grantor. Elena Sullivan. Grantee. Sullivan Holdings, LLC. Status. Pending notarization. Timestamp. 10:42 in the morning. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 in the morning. I looked at the medical monitor Dr. Eris had rigged. It showed a flat line of consciousness, starting at 9 in the morning yesterday. That timestamp was my smoking gun. It proved the document was signed and notarized while I was medically documented as comatose. In a court of law, that timestamp was a felony. But I did not want to send Victor to court. I wanted to send him to the poorhouse. I took a screenshot. Then I opened my encrypted messaging app and texted the one person I knew Victor feared more than the loan sharks. Elias. I need a Delaware LLC in a shark suit. Emergency. Elias was my mentor. He was the kind of real estate attorney who ate nails for breakfast and billed you for the iron supplement. He had taught me everything I knew about land law. He replied in 3 minutes. "Are you okay?" "I heard about the crash." "I am awake," I typed. "Victor isn't. He forged my signature to sell my land. I want to buy it back before he finds a buyer." "You want to buy your own stolen land?" "No. I want to buy his company with it." I spent the rest of the night drafting the most lethal document of my career. We needed a bait. Victor could not resist. He was desperate, yes, but he was also a snob. He would not sell to just anyone. He needed to believe he was outsmarting the market. So, I created a lie he would want to believe. I drafted a letter of intent on Elias's firm letterhead. It stated that we represented a private equity fund from Dubai, looking for strategic logistic hubs. But the kicker was the addendum. I added a note implying we had proprietary rezoning intelligence that the city was secretly planning to rezone that district for luxury commercial use next month, which would triple the land's value. It was fake. I knew the zoning board. They were not rezoning anything. But Victor did not know that. When he saw that letter, he would not see a trap. He would see a chance to dump a useless asset on a stupid foreigner for $9 million before the city changed its mind. He would think he was the one winning. Then came the poison pill. "Elias," I typed, my thumb cramping. "Draft the purchase agreement. Standard boilerplate, fast close. But in the warranty of title section, I want a share pledge agreement." "Aggressive," Elias replied. "If he breaches the warranty, you seize his equity?" "Exactly." Clause 8c. If the seller cannot demonstrate clear, undisputed title at the moment of signing, the seller agrees to forfeit 51% of Sullivan Real Estate voting shares to the buyer as liquidated damages. It was a clause designed for high-risk international deals, usually to stop warlords from selling bridges they did not own. For a legitimate businessman, it was a formality. For a fraudster who knew his title was built on a forged signature, it was a guillotine. But I knew Victor. He would not read the fine print. He would only see the $9 million figure, enough to pay off the sharks and keep $1 million for himself. His greed would blind him to the blade hanging over his neck. By dawn, the trap was set. The LLC was registered. The offer was in his inbox. Dr. Aris came in to check my vitals. "Your father is in the lobby," he whispered. "He is telling the nurses he needs to prepare for the funeral." "Let him in," I said, sliding my phone under the mattress and letting my face go slack. "I need him to feel safe." The next morning, the setting shifted from the sterile white of the ICU to the polished mahogany of a high-rise conference room. This was the closing. I was not there yet. I was in a private ambulance, being transported under the guise of a medical transfer arranged by Dr. Aris. But I knew exactly what was happening in that room. I had scripted every line of dialogue, every pause, every bead of sweat. Elias sat at the head of the table in his glass-walled office, wearing a suit that cost more than my father's car. He represented Terra Nova Holdings, the shell company I had registered in Delaware just hours earlier. Across from him sat Victor. My father looked rejuvenated. The grieving parent mask he had worn at the hospital was gone, replaced by the swagger of a man who believed he had just cheated death. He was joking with Silas, the corrupt notary who had helped him steal my life just 48 hours prior. "It is a tragedy, really," Victor was saying, smoothing his tie. "Elena, she would have wanted this deal. She always cared about the company's liquidity. We are sorry for your impending loss," Elias said, his voice flat. "But my clients are on a tight schedule. They fly back to Dubai tonight. We need to close." He slid the purchase agreement across the table. It was thick, dense with legalese, and bound in a blue folder. Victor picked up his gold Mont Blanc pen, the one he used to sign gala checks, and began to read. I knew he would. Victor was a gambler, but he was not illiterate. He scanned the purchase price. $9 million. I imagine his heart skipped a beat. That was enough to pay off the $8 million debt to the sharks and leave him with $1 million cushion to restart his gambling habit. He flipped the pages, scanning for the catch. And then he stopped. Page 14. Clause 8c. The share pledge agreement. Victor said, his finger tapping the paper. "This is unusual, Elias. You want me to pledge 51% of Sullivan Real Estate's voting stock as collateral? Just for a warranty of title? It is aggressive," Silas muttered, leaning in. "If there is any issue with the deed, they take the majority share." Instantly. No court hearing. Victor looked up, his eyes narrowing. "Why do they need this?" "I am the CEO. My name is on the deed transfer." Elias did not blink. He did not defend the clause. He leaned back in his chair and checked his watch. A masterclass in indifference. "Victor, you are selling a prime industrial asset in 24 hours to an overseas fund based on a rumor about rezoning. My clients are nervous. They do not know you. They do not know if there are liens, hidden heirs, or family disputes." Elias reached for the folder, starting to pull it back. "If you are not 100% confident the title is clean, do not sign. I have another seller in Brooklyn who is begging for this capital. We can walk right now." It was the perfect bluff. Elias threatened to take away the one thing Victor needed to survive. Victor's hand froze. He looked at the contract. He looked at his watch. He thought about the men in the black SUV who had given him until Friday. And then, his arrogance kicked in. He knew he had forged the deed perfectly. He had the notary right there. In his mind, the title was clean because he had erased the only person who could contest it. "No need for drama," Victor said, a tight smile returning to his face. "The title is ironclad. My daughter. She is incapacitated. I have full authority." "Then sign," Elias said. Victor uncapped the pen. With a flourish, he signed his name on the line that guaranteed his honesty with his empire. He did not just sign a contract, he signed a confession. "Done," Victor said, closing the folder. "When do the funds wire?" "Right now," Elias said. He tapped his phone. But he was not authorizing a wire transfer. He was sending a text to me. "It is done. Come get him." "Done," Victor said, sliding the blue folder back across the polished mahogany table. The sound of the heavy paper sliding against the wood was the only noise in the room. He capped his gold pen and sat back, exhaling a cloud of relief he had been holding for months. "The deed is transferred. The land is yours. My daughter. She would have wanted this deal to go through. It secures her legacy. He dabbed a fake tear from the corner of his eye. It was a masterclass in performance. He truly believed he was the tragic hero of this story. The grieving father doing the hard work while his daughter faded away. He checked his watch again. He was calculating the wire transfer time, mentally spending the $9 million before it even hit the account. Excellent, Elias said. He did not check the signature. He did not open the folder. He just looked at the heavy oak double doors at the far end of the conference room. There is just one final shareholder we need to acknowledge. Victor frowned. Shareholder? I own the company. I am the CEO. Not for the next 5 minutes, Elias said. The oak doors slid open with a low, mechanical hum. The sound that followed was specific and terrifying in that quiet room, the squeak of rubber tires on polished concrete. I rolled in, pushed by Dr. Eris. I was wearing hospital scrubs. My skin was pale, my hair was matted, and I still had the IV port taped to the back of my hand. I looked like a ghost who had dragged herself out of the grave. But my eyes were burning. Victor stood up so fast his chair tipped over and crashed to the floor. His face drained of color, turning a sickly, ash gray. He looked at me, then at the empty door behind me as if looking for a ghost. Elena? He choked out. You are awake? I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not give him the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. I simply wheeled myself up to the opposite end of the table. I looked small in that chair, but I felt like a giant. I have been awake since Tuesday, Dad, I said. My voice was raspy from the ventilator, but it was steady. And I am the buyer. I slid a single, thin file folder across the long table. It stopped perfectly in front of him. What is this? Victor whispered. He looked at Silas. The corrupt notary was already backing away toward the wall, clutching his briefcase like a shield. Open it, I said. Victor's trembling hands opened the file. Item 1, Elias said, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. A medical affidavit from Dr. Eris, time-stamped and notarized. It confirms that at the exact moment, Silas supposedly notarized Elena's signature on the deed transfer. Elena was a Glasgow coma scale of 3. That is a deep coma, Victor. Legally incapacitated. Victor stared at the paper. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Item 2, Elias continued. A forensic analysis of the thumbprint on the deed. The drag marks are consistent with a limp hand being forced onto the paper. It is assault, Victor. And it is fraud. Victor looked up, desperation flooding his eyes. He turned to his accomplice. Silas, tell them. She woke up. She signed it. Elias turned his chair slowly to face the notary. Silas. We have the ICU visitor logs placing you in the room for exactly 8 minutes. We have the medical data. You can walk out of here as a co-defendant facing 10 years for forgery and fraud. Or you can stay right there as a witness for the prosecution. Silas did not hesitate. Rats never do when the ship sinks. He pointed a shaking finger at my father. He forced me to do it. It was his idea. He said she was going to die anyway. Shut up, Victor roared. I paid you to forge a signature? Elias finished. Thank you for the confession. Victor slumped back against the table. He looked at the contract he had just signed. The $9 million. The rescue. It was evaporating. You set me up, he whispered. You let me sign that. I did not make you do anything, Dad, I said. I made you an offer. You are the one who decided to sell a stolen house. Elias tapped the blue folder containing the contract Victor had just signed. Here is where it gets interesting, Victor. You just signed a purchase agreement containing a warranty of title. You guaranteed you had the legal right to sell that land. But as we have just proven, you stole it. That is a breach of contract. Elias flipped to page 14. And per Section 8, Clause C, the share pledge agreement you just executed, the penalty for a fraudulent title is immediate liquidation. You pledged 51% of Sullivan Real Estate's voting shares as collateral. Victor's eyes bulged. He looked at the paper, reading the words he had ignored just minutes ago. I watched him, and I realized exactly why he had fallen for it. It was not stupidity. It was the greed trap. When a man is drowning, he does not check the life raft for holes. He was so desperate for the $9 million. So arrogant in his belief that I was a vegetable he could discard, that he blinded himself to the obvious danger. He assumed he was the predator. He never imagined he could be the prey. The contract triggers automatically upon proof of fraud, Elias said, uncapping a pen. We have the proof. We have the contract. He slid a final document toward me. The execution of share transfer. Dad, I said softly. Victor looked at me. For a second, I saw the father I used to worship. The man who taught me how to read blueprints. But then I saw the man who squeezed my wrist until it bruised so he could pay a bookie. Please, he begged. Elena. The company. It is the legacy. It is all we have. It is all I have, I corrected. You gambled yours away. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. My hand was still weak from the atrophy, but my signature was flawless. I signed the paper. In that 1 second, the majority ownership of Sullivan Real Estate transferred from Victor Sullivan to the shell company, which meant it transferred to me. I put the pen down. I own your chair, Dad. I own your desk. I own the building we are sitting in. And I own your debt. Victor looked around the room, realizing he was the smallest thing in it. He had walked in as a CEO. He was walking out as a trespasser. Victor stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The reality of what had just happened was finally settling in. He was not the CEO anymore. He was not the patriarch. He was just a man with $8 million of bad debt and 0 assets to cover it. Elena, he rasped, his voice cracking. You do not understand. The people I owe. They are not like Elias. They do not file lawsuits. They break legs. If I do not have the money by Friday, they will kill me. He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out, begging. Please, just release the funds. You can keep the company. Just give me the $9 million. I am your father. I looked at him. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel the need to fix his mess. I did not feel the urge to jump into the construction trailer and solve the zoning issue. I felt absolutely nothing. That sounds like a personal liability issue, Dad, I said, my voice as cold as the AC vent above us. And as of 5 minutes ago, I am strictly into asset management. Your debt is unsecured. It is not my problem. You are sentencing me to death, he screamed. Lunging forward, 2 security guards stepped out from the hallway, blocking him. Elias had called them 10 minutes ago. They were not the cheap rent-a-cops Victor used to hire. They were professionals. Mr. Sullivan, one of them said, taking Victor by the arm. You are trespassing on private property. We need to escort you out. Victor fought them, shouting my name, shouting about loyalty, shouting about family, but they dragged him out the heavy oak doors, his heels scuffing the polished floor, the same floor he used to walk across like a king. I wheeled myself over to the floor-to-ceiling window. From the 34th floor, the city looked like a circuit board, logical and orderly. I looked down at the street below. I saw Victor stumble out of the building, lobby onto the sidewalk. He looked small from up here. He looked around wildly, straightening his jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. But then, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. It did not park. It just idled. The back window rolled down. Victor froze. He knew who was inside. The loan sharks did not care about corporate takeovers or share pledge agreements. They did not care about legal loopholes. They just cared that it was Friday. And he did not have their money. I watched him walk slowly toward the car, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I did not watch what happened next. I did not need to. I spun my wheelchair around, turning my back on the window, on the street, and on him. On the mahogany table lay the master plan for the city's actual rezoning project, the real one, not the fake one I had used to bait him. It was a mess of red tape and potential, waiting for someone with the vision to fix it. I picked up the pen. I had a city to plan. I didn't just survive. I acquired the grief and liquidated it. If you believe that smart revenge is the best revenge, hit subscribe. And tell me, what's the one thing you would never forgive?